Welcome to Satisfactory Update 8. My name is Nilaus and I was wrong about blueprints. Instead of simply just saying that and talking a bit about it, I will show you something amazing I have designed. If you are at all familiar with any of my work, then you may know my jumpstart base from Factorio. I present to you the jumpstart base in Satisfactory. So what are we looking at here? Well, this is a series of blueprints that slot together in a 4x36 foundation area to create everything you need for the early game. On the screen you can see the inputs and outputs of the jumpstart base, and if this is something that you would like to have organized and just stamped down with a few simple blueprints, well, this is the episode for you. With every new update of Satisfactory, I tend to restart and make a new series, but there are only so many times I can make a video of showing you the perfect starter base. So now what I've done is I have collected and designed a number of blueprints so that we can stamp down to build our starter base and thereby move quicker up the tech tree. How do you get your hands on these crisp new blueprints? Well, I've been contemplating whether to give this as a Patreon reward or just give it to everyone. I have in the end decided to initially reserve it as a reward for my Patreon supporters, but I will be making them available for everyone later on. This is the first iteration and it'll need some more tweaking to be fully up to my standards in terms of general release blueprints. Like Satisfactory is on experimental release, so will these blueprints, and when Satisfactory Update 8 moves to early access, these blueprints will also be in a more refined state, and they will also be made available to everyone at that point. I feel that I don't always give enough tangible rewards for my Patreon supporters, and this seems like a great opportunity to give early access to new designs and blueprints as a reward, while giving it to everyone else eventually, so there's no gatekeeping here, only a matter of early access. Let's talk a bit about the jumpstart base and blueprints in general and the improvements for update 8. Jumpstart base. The purpose of the starter base in Satisfactory is slightly different from the one I've made in Factorio, because blueprints are only available once you get the first steel. I really hope that changes, by the way. I would suggest rushing this tech as soon as possible, or maybe even unlocking with the new advanced game settings so you can get access to this a bit early. This base requires materials to build, so you do need some kind of starter constructors to get the ball rolling. My idea for this base is this is the transition from building on the ground like some filthy savage to building on foundations like a true factory connoisseur. This base is perfectly aligned with foundations, so if you lay down 4x36 foundations and make sure that they are all in level and don't clip in terrain, then this jumpstart base will perfectly align to that area. Since blueprints are a later unlock, I'm also assuming some of the very early initial alternate recipes are available, and I do that because they are such a better fit both in terms of ratios and also in terms of space constraints. You can see here the ones that I am assuming that you have unlocked, not a lot, but it's it's also some of the early ones to unlock. So get out there, get a few hard drives and unlock those to get the ball rolling. The jumpstart base is assuming 3 belts of iron and 1 belt of copper. I've excluded limestone and biomass from this build, but they may be integrated later, but they are basically completely separate at this point. I'll be walking through each of the modules and how they work in detail and the limitations and what you need to do manually when stamping these together. But first, let's talk a bit about how I was wrong about blueprints. Blueprints in Update 8. My initial assessment of blueprints was that they were too small and too complicated to use to serve any real purposes. I've not fundamentally changed my perspective, but my assessment has been upgraded from useless to better than nothing. So that's certainly a progress. Size matters. 4x4 is still unreasonably small. I can only assume that the reason for this is related to performance and the unwieldiness of trying to position giant blueprints. I would rather have an entity limit rather than a size limit if it's for performance reasons, and I think that still a 5x5 would allow for much more flexibility. Builds such as coal power plants and refineries can only barely fit inside the box, and it just means that there is not a lot of sort of individual variation in design for these parts. 4x4 is what is given to us, and that's the size we have, so let's make it the most fun to try to work with that constraint. Snapping. The fact that blueprints cannot snap with each other is a major hassle and something they just need to fix. I understand that it's complicated to determine if from a game engine perspective, but obviously that can be done and they just need to prioritize getting it done. But given that that's the constraint we have to work with and we have to manually connect all the belts, pipes and power poles, then I have tried to make it as easy as possible to see what needs to be connected for you when stamping down to blueprints that should snap together. Placement. Placing big blueprints was a huge hassle in Update 7 and caused endless frustration for anyone trying to get this aligned. Particularly the deconstructing of 1,000 pieces or 100 pieces because you misplaced it by a single tick. Now this whole blueprint and nudging, the blueprint mode for placement and the deconstruction mode for blueprints is way more impactful than I had anticipated and makes it for a lot smoother to incorporate blueprints naturally through a playthrough. And even for just big buildings in general, the nudging is really nice. What to expect? Well, with my recent change of attitude from blueprints being useless to blueprints being better than nothing, you can expect to also see some differences in the way I play the game. I'm known for making crisp designs in all the games I play and providing the blueprints to the community. I will of course do a lot more of this in Satisfactory as well, and will first be releasing them to patrons and later on to everyone. I'm streaming Satisfactory on Twitch regularly and expect this to continue for a long time. The new advanced game settings and how we have created an interaction with the Twitch chat, the blueprints, and my unique design for a base in Update 8 that you can see here in the background are all reinvigorating my passion for Satisfactory. So come join on Twitch TV/Nilaus and be part of the design and build process. Deep dive into starter base. I'll be walking through each module of the jumpstart base and showing you how to connect each module. The blueprints are intentionally designed without lights in the service level, and I did this because I don't want to assume that you have these recipes unlocked by the time you want to build this base. This is a very early game and so early as possible, so assuming you have quartz available is a little bit much. But feel free to add lights as you deem necessary for yourself. Another design consideration was to avoid lavish in the decoration and focus on function over form. I do this to keep the construction cost down so that you can build it easier, but also because I do favor function over form. And there are other creators who excel on the aesthetic aspects, but my focus is always to stay effective. So let's take a look at our build here, and we have these blueprints. They are 4x4, they are about 4 lanes high. And they need to be positioned correctly so that the smelters are pointing towards us. That is always the case. And we'll use the nudge function here and then just try to sort of align it correctly. Now it's kind of funny how it switches. There we go. Is that correct? Yeah, that sounds about correct. All right, so we stamp this first one down. This one is taken care of. Iron and copper. Oh, no. Iron plates in here and in here. Those 2 for iron plates and 2 for iron rods. The way it works is in general that down here we have all the inputs and outputs. I'll keep the input belts here on the right hand side and the output belts on the left hand side. And I have of course prepared a little thing here so that we can get things inbound. I'll be bringing in all of the raw materials. This is something you have to do all the time or every time you get in. Here we go. And then it'll be going in. Of course, you also need to hook it up to power. Right now I think we're working on a no power line right now. So we can just hook that up to power. And that's something you'd have to do to begin with. So that it gets in power and then it is started the first one. And you will see that these 2 belts will come out with iron plates and iron rods respectively. And so we can move on to the next one. This is one that's repeated twice and I can go to blueprint mode, and that's really awesome. I love that. So it's just putting it in here and then rotating it, and then it snaps perfectly. Our walkway up here is just continuing, and below ground here, this is where we have to hook up everything. And yes, it does need more lights, but I don't want to assume that you have lights at this point, so that's why we have to do it this way. Let's see, that one, and then you have to hook up these things. This is this goes here. That was a mistake. I just upgraded this one to another belt, and that no. This is an output belt, so that needs to just be level 1. But we can also see that the third of these belt is now going up here and getting moved into this location. So this is getting ready for the next, and the first block has been using 90 iron, so feed 90 iron into that. Here we have 2 smelters. They go over here. They will make iron plates, and over here they'll make wires and iron wire that will give us the stitched iron plate recipe, which is in my opinion the absolute best of these. 5.62 iron plates, or what are they called? They are called reinforced iron plates, and they go on this belt and they move forward. So at this point we hooked up the belts, but we did not hook up the power lines, so we just also need to hook up the power lines here. That one go from here to here. So I just try to set these up. And now we can go on to the next one. 5.62 is, in my opinion, not enough. So we are going to build another one of these. And that will be hooked up as well. We go in here and just connect the two ones, and this continues. Each of these take 49 iron, so that should not be a problem to get this. And then I will hook up all the normal lines, or the output lines, the iron plates, the iron rods, and the reinforced iron plates. And okay, I think I made a little mistake. We forgot to hook this one up. It's easy to see what's not working because, well, it won't be working then. And the last one is the power lines, and that is also taken care of now, so that's good. So we now have everything on this board, and we want to see that it is actually working when we get new power in here. So this smelting is done. We're getting slowly, it's coming in here. Let's look at the other one, the first one placed, and this is working. We can see that we are building a little bit of this, and we are getting this one on inbound. The wire is not coming in super fast, and there we go. So that starts working now, and then we can go onwards. So now we have, what, 11.24 reinforced iron plates per minute, which is absolutely amazing, and way more than we actually need, even though you can see here I'm using quite a lot of Mark II belts. So keep that in mind as we get this up and running. You don't have to build everything at once, but you can build this and then just put it into a box, then continue when you want to build the next one. The next one will be heavy modular frames. Again, we're going to use the blueprint, just under control to snap it in here. And you can see here the smelter. If there is a smelter, the smelter should be always facing towards us. And then we can go down in here again, hook everything up. We'll hook up the power line first, from here to here. So power line. Then we hook up the resource lines here. That one, you can see it goes, this is now starting the next line because each of the reinforced iron plate uses 49, so 2 times 49 is 98, and that goes up here. Can you do it something like to really utilize the power more? Yes, you can, but if you do that, then it it just gets a lot harder to do it. Why? Right now, honestly, I'm a little bit worried why. Oh, I was about to say why we're not seeing reinforced iron plates, but they're coming in here. 3 stitched iron plates coming in. They will now be branched off into the modular frames, because the modular frame build is the bolted frame, which takes reinforced iron plates and some screws. I have turned this down so it consumes 100 screws. I'm using the casted screws here, 50 casted screws for each, and they will hopefully, once this one gets on, I will get the casted screws, and this one will also get the next one really soon. Go, go, go. Yeah, well, it's coming. I've marked all these down to exactly the right ratio so that we don't have any surplus anywhere, and we'll just get the reinforced iron plates, we'll get the screws going, and then we can move on to the next one. Next one will be rotors. Rotors are here. Again, control to get the blueprint mode. It snaps in here, and we can then go look at this recipe. This is just the normal recipe using iron rods. I've scaled it down so it fits with 15, which is exactly what one constructor can keep up with, and then the screws as well. Again, we go down here, and now you can see we have the third of the iron belt, the third and last of the iron belt is now going up, and that will now be set connected onwards inbound, and then we have the copper line behind that will be going in. Then we'll go over to the other side, and then we will be getting the output belt, and the output belt up here, and there's also an output belt here. So that's now iron plates, iron rods, reinforced iron plates, and the last one here will be the modular frames when they get there. On top of that, we will also be looking at connecting the power lines. That's something you need to connect for every single one. And now we have modular frames. This is producing 3.5 modular frames over here, and this is producing 3 rotors every minute. So those are pretty damn good numbers for just getting all the stuff you need for the factory going. Now we built all the iron lines, and we have no more iron lines available. I am just here at the end. I'm taking the copper line and branching it up and getting it ready for that input line where we always have the input line. So let's get started on the first copper build. That is here. We'll switch it on. And like we've done so much times before, now we're just smelting copper. Copper gets smelted, gets over on the other side. That becomes the 60 copper we are consuming on this one becomes 120 copper wire, and that's more than we need, but we will also be using that for other things. So let's get this started by hooking that one up. Let's go to the other side. And of course you can also do that without flying, but we're going to do it with flying this time around. And then we start hooking all the other things up. This is now the modular frames that we put up here, which isn't coming, the rotors up here, the iron plates, the iron rods, the reinforced iron plates, and the modular frames. And then the last one to hook up is the power line from here to here. And so that is also getting going, and we now have the first copper wire coming. And we have more copper because we are consuming 120 copper on this line, so we just need to build to the next one. That is build number 7, and again hold control and just snap it in here exactly next to the other one. I do like this. And we continue. We start by continuing the main line here. We go over to the other side. And now we take all of these plates, rotors, rods, reinforced iron plates, and down here we have the modular frames. And here is one thing that you have to keep in mind. This part is getting 120 outbound, so we do need this one to be a Mark II to connect. That will get 120 over here. The 60 of those will be branched off and go into our cable builder here, which will give us all the cable needs, 30 cable. The next 3 are working on making copper sheets, so we get 30 copper sheets, which should keep you well supplied when you start making pipes for coal power and also for hypertubes all over the map. So now we built basically all the stuff that I feel is necessary here in the beginning. And what we want to do from now on is this next one is completely optional. This is a gigantic spaghetti mess. It is the awesome sink, but I wanted to make sure that there is an awesome sink build incorporated here. And this looks super neat, especially when the belts actually spawn. There we go. I was just thinking, did I save a blueprint without belts? No. This is all good, but it is an absolute disgusting mess down here. But it works. But if you don't want an awesome sink, you can just skip this one. Everything connects directly without this. And all we need to do, so for example, there's no output belt here. Or sorry, the input, the raw materials. Now it's only a matter of just continuing these lines here, and also of course continuing the power supply. There we go. Let's get the power supply going, and we continue with these belts. That goes here, and it goes here, and down there. That one. So you can see we have modular frames now. Now we don't need to use a Mark II for the wire anymore because we only have 60. The other 60 went up and became cables. Then the cables are down. No, that's the sheets. Good. And the cables come up here. So now we have all 8 materials that we want. And into this spaghetti mess, they are all smart splitters. And the reason why you might not want it is because you don't have the smart splitter. You need some Caterium. It's not that bad to get smart splitters early. It's easy to get the Caterium. Then you just handcraft some AI, and then you can build this one. It takes 8 smart splitters. So that is 8 AI limiters. That is 80 Caterium or Caterium quark wire. And that's pretty easy. So here we now have the coupons getting started with all of the residual here, but they will all start by moving forward. You can see that they start by going here, and only the excess will go in. I would recommend that at some point, probably immediately, but I didn't want to take that decision for you. You can, for example, cut this line if you want, because you might not want to throw away your copper wire, even if they're in excess, because they fill up too much of the belt and you might want to send something else. But in the beginning, let's just feed it with everything we have. But once we start filling up boxes of reinforced iron plates, modular frames, and rotors, we really want those to be going in instead, and not having the belt jammed because of wire that isn't really worth much. Now there's only the final part left, and that is, not surprising, the storage box here. So let's stamp that in, and that doesn't need any power connection because there's no power. And what we have here is just a ramp so that we can get in here, and then we have all the 8 ingredients in here. I was really contemplating setting tags on here, but if I did that, then I would also have to assume that you've also been out and getting quartz, and I just didn't want to make that assumption for this blueprint. So I would encourage you to set up your own signals here or signs to indicate what it is, but I don't feel that it belonged in the blueprint. I wanted to make it as minimalistic as possible, and let's see if we get something in here. That would be really nice if we saw something coming in here. Huh. Oh, right, of course nothing is coming in because blueprints don't connect themselves. All right, let's remember that. It was the fact that it didn't need power that got me sort of confused. Now with the new Lumen update, everything here is super dark, and I would also myself add lights to this, but I don't want to put, or I don't want to assume that we have lights by the time we want to craft this. So again, this is built without any lights, and we should see that we get just a little bit in here, rotors, we get reinforced iron plates, we get iron plates, we get iron rods, and we get the copper wire, we get the cables, we get the modular frames, and we get the copper sheets. So we now have everything available right now, and that's all it took. I don't even know how long it took to hook this up, but it didn't feel like a lot of time. And this is now available to you as well if you are a patron supporter. If you're not, you can of course rebuild it as you like, or you can wait until there will be a new and more polished version available, because I will keep optimizing this one. Various things, there might be some bottlenecks, there might be some way we can make it, and when it's currently, I would say this blueprint is in an experimental version. When it gets into an early access version, everyone gets access to it, like Satisfactory. So it will be available, don't worry, and I'll put a note in the description below. That concludes the walkthrough of each of the module of the Jumpstart base. I hope this was something that you found useful. I expect to do a lot more design stuff in Satisfactory, both on Twitch and here on YouTube. I hope this is something that you are interested in. If it is, please consider subscribing here on YouTube and joining the live streams. If you want access to the new blueprints, they are already available right now on Patreon for supporters there, and they will be made available to everyone when Satisfactory Update 8 goes from experimental to early access. This is my little call to action to encourage people to consider supporting on Patreon, but also making sure that even if you don't have the means or the opportunity or the interest, then I will not be keeping anything from you. I'll give you all of the blueprints in due time. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, take care and stay effective.